Hi, this is Chris Potter. The topic of this video is some tips for playing the bass flute in the flute ensemble. The first thing that is usually the problem in flute ensemble is that your right arm gets so tired holding the flute up. After about a half an hour, it's so fatiguing to hold up such a large instrument so far from your body. So here's a solution for you. This is something that's recently come on the market. It's called the bass flute lap crutch, and you can get this at Flute World, and it has a little cradle on the top for the flute and an adjustable rod right here, so you can make this longer or shorter depending on how tall or not you are. And the flute sits right in there like that. So when you play, you find the right spot for that on your leg, and it moves around, and it's quite comfortable. It's very portable, and I think you should get on the waiting list because that's all that's available right now. There is such a big demand for these, but that really helps solve that right hand problem. Another thing that you could do if you don't have one of those is you get one of the wire stands. Everybody's got a couple sitting in their closet. You put a cloth on it, and then the flute can rest right there in the crook of the stand. Now, as you move around, the stand sort of starts doing some weird little things, but it's certainly better than nothing, and that definitely works. Another option is to get one of the black metal stands, and you flip it so that the flat part here is on the top. You get that cloth, you put it over the top, and you can rest your flute on that. Now this is more stable than the wire stand, but it's also heavier, yet one more heavy thing that we have to haul around with us. But you can easily move the flute around left and right, forward and backwards, and it's pretty stable. These two can work when you're standing up as well, whereas the lap crutch only works when you're sitting down. Now, I do recommend that the basses be allowed to sit down, at least for most of the rehearsals, because your hand gets so fatigued holding up the instrument. It wears you out very quickly. So if you're sitting down, you can put your flute in your lap and not have to be holding onto it. If you do absolutely have to stand up, even for all the rehearsals, get a flute peg so that you can put the flute on the peg next to you. But conductors realize that it's going to take a while for the people to get their flutes up off of the peg, so there's somewhat of a delay right there. But those are some good solutions. The next problem comes with tuning. I tune to the A that's on the second space of the treble staff. This is usually a representative note of what's going to be played on the bass in the flute ensemble. So that's the best note to tune to. I also tune to whatever key we're in. So if we're in F major, I make sure that my F is in tune. And the best possible option really is to look in the piece and find, say, 2 or 3 measures in, a note that's representative of the range, the octave, and the dynamic level of the piece. Start at the beginning and play those 2 or 3 measures, and then stop on that note and see where you are, because that's going to let you know how you're actually playing a note in the piece. If you're tuning in this position and then you're playing in this position, you're going to be flatter. So you need to compensate for that. Now, if your piece is really, really soft, make sure you tune at a very, very soft level. That will give you a better idea of where you need to tune. Another problem that happens is that the flute gets slippery when you're in a performance, that we start sweating a little bit. So there's something called a hand positioner that I use, and I've got one right here on my bass. It's a little piece of white, it's a little white patch. I know it's sort of hard to see, but it keeps my finger from slipping, keeps the flute from slipping on my finger. And another something that I use a lot is called the lip plate grip, and that goes right behind the opening of the mouthpiece, and that keeps it from slipping around. Flute World has these products. Another problem that happens is that you're playing like crazy and people can't really hear you. Maybe there's 20 flutes in one bass. So you might want to consider, if this is really bothering you, amplifying yourself. I, as a soloist, carry amplification with me. Sometimes my luggage is more than half my sound system, and I use a lapel mic, or it's sometimes called a radio mic, and it's very small, very unobtrusive, and it just hooks onto your clothing. And then the signal from that goes into a receiver, which is then plugged into the speaker. And this is the speaker that I use. It's called the Roland Cube, and it's designed so that you can travel with it. It's got reinforced corners, and it's got a nice strong steel mesh over the speaker, so the speaker doesn't get damaged. This particular one has 4 different channels, so you could actually put 4 different flute players in here if you wanted to. I found that that keeps me from forcing, which of course is bad for tone on any flute. But it's something else you have to carry around with you. I have a rolling suitcase when I'm traveling that is mostly my sound system. I'm going to talk now about some actual problems in the pieces themselves. Sometimes composers write very low, very fast tongued notes and expect them to be crisp, and it's just not going to happen. So if you've done your best, you've practiced some scales, you've come up with exercises, that you've worked really hard to get it as fast and as crisp as you can, and it's just not that good. Bass is just so big. It just doesn't work very well to do that. So consider, if you have a bunch of 16th notes in the part, maybe you just play 8th notes or even quarter notes if it's that fast. And that will keep that same sort of life and drive going, and it might actually help the piece to do that. Sometimes we maybe play something an octave higher. That sometimes works. Sometimes composers write in the 3rd octave. What were they thinking? Just give it to the flutes. But no, they put it on bass flute, and I hope they want that thin, wispy sound, because that's what they're going to get. So intonation is the biggest problem up here in the 3rd octave, because the notes starting at the C just above the staff are all quite sharp, and so intonation becomes the big problem. So in my book, the Alto and Bass Flute Resource Book, I have 2.5 pages of fingerings, especially focusing on the 3rd octave. There's another page over here, another page over there, of alternate fingerings to try to get those notes better in tune, because that will really ruin a good performance to have things out of tune. So you have to use alternate fingerings up there. There's just no way around it. Maybe you can play it an octave lower. I mean, just think about what your options are, but it's never going to sound as beautiful as the C flute. It just can't. Breathing sometimes is a problem. Composers just go on and on and on and on and on, and there's no place to breathe. And if you have a second bass player, maybe you should plan between you to stagger the breathing so that you're breathing on the even measures, they're breathing on the odd measures. Sometimes you just have to leave out notes. So don't leave out a note that's on a main beat of the bar, but pick something that's a division of the beat. Sometimes they just make it difficult. Make sure that you are breathing well when you're playing. Think about your breathing. And if you are sitting, make sure that you're actually sitting forward on your chair so that there's enough room for you to expand in the lower part of your torso, because sometimes we don't quite get in enough air. As far as carting things around, there's just so much stuff. All those pegs. This is my bass bag. It holds my bass and my alto and my C flute and my E flat and my piccolo, plus a bunch of music. And it gets awfully heavy. So what I had done was, on the back here, I had them put a little slip sleeve on the back. Hope you can see that, little slip sleeve on the back. And I can put one of those little portable luggage carriers through there, and I can wheel this around if I don't feel like carrying it, because we do start feeling like pack mules sometimes. Well, I hope I was able to give you some good ideas today. Thank you.